I am delighted to be here, very, very happy to be here, because in part, very personally, this is a very special moment in my life. This fall is the 40th anniversary of Diet for a Small Planet. And thank you. It's a time, as you can imagine, of a lot of introspection, looking back, retrospection. But I have to tell you, I was telling this to Jessie Cool because it just seems so emblematic of my life path. I gave birth to Anna some decades ago, my daughter who I now work with. Soon after we learned together that actually Anna in Sanskrit is food. So, and then she named her daughter Ida, and then we learned soon after that Ida is the Hindu goddess of food. And then this little Hindu goddess of food, I was babysitting this weekend, and she starts singing, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star." But when she gets to up above the sky so high, like a diner in the sky, she thinks. So somehow this food thing is really imprinted in the Lappe women. I am thrilled to be here on this at any time, but especially meaningful right now. So I'm looking back, and okay, 40 years ago. This summit is, in a sense, for me, and there is so much going on now in the world around the power of food. So I'm looking back and realizing that just take you back to Diet for Small Planet's first hitting the stands. And do you know that the National Cattlemen's Association actually set a team of cooks to prove that you could not eat this food? And here we are, 40 years later, and we have Jessie Cool, we have Cool Cafe, Platt Street Cafe, we have so much to prove them absolutely wrong. Of course, things have improved a lot since the 1970s. I remember sitting with Alice Waters when we interviewed her for our book, Hope's Edge, and Alice was saying, how wonderful it is, and how, we've gone from stir fries to what we have today, and I didn't have the nerve to admit to Alice Waters that I still love stir-fried vegetables over brown rice, but I do. So some sense of the distance. 40 years ago, of course, most schoolyards, in which I have many scars on my knees to prove, were hard asphalt, and now I'm sure you Californians know that just in your state alone there are 3,000 school gardens. 40 years ago, there were not enough farmers markets for USDA even to register, count them. And I think this is a true story. I'm still tracking down the details. And if any of you know this, tell me. But in the mid-'70s, the way that I understand the explosion of farmers markets is in the mid-'70s that there was a huge harvest of peaches that peach orchard people couldn't sell. And so they wanted to sell them directly. But the regulations were that they couldn't do that it was against the law. So they dumped them on Jerry Brown's Capitol in I believe this was '76, on the yard of the grounds of the Capitol. And a year later, he passed legislation enabling farmers markets. And today, there are over 7,000, just in the last year alone, a 17% increase in farmers markets. 40 years ago, yes, organic, for me anyway, just brought up bad memories before, I began this process, bad memories of college chemistry. And today, it is, as you know, the fastest growing segment of our food system. And just in the last decade, organic acreage worldwide has tripled. 40 years ago, small farmers who still grow 70% of our food, they were rarely heard. But today, the organization Via Campesina represents over 200 million small farmers around the world, working for what they are calling food sovereignty. And today, the right to food is now enshrined in more than 24 constitutions. So there is definitely a huge, huge change. Oh, I wanted to mention, Christopher encouraged me, on our website, when we were doing all this thinking of what the road that we've traveled, we came up with the idea of a food timeline that you can actually, scroll through. And so if you wanted to go to our website at some point, smallplanet.org, and if you click on the food environment tab of our website, you'll see it right there, the food timeline, and you can scroll through, and please tell us what we don't have on that timeline that you think is a big milestone, and tell us why you think it is. And we had some of the luminaries in the food movement give us their ideas about what the milestones should be that we would put on that timeline. So for me, the global food movement that I feel that we are all part of, and it's so important to think in that big, big way, is that its power is that it taps absolutely universal, across cultures, needs and sensibilities. So I think of, the Hindu farmers in India who are now rejecting GMOs and re-embracing seed saving. I think of the farmers, Muslim farmers in Niger who are pushing back the desert, and I'll show you an image of that accomplishment tonight. I think of American Christian farmers who are interpreting creation care as their call to sustainable farming. So the food movement has tremendous power. It has the power to shift our sense of self. Because the dominant paradigm tells us that we are just victims operating, self-interested little egos operating in a market that operates on its own, doesn't really need us. That is what was captured in Ronald Reagan's phrase, the magic of the market. But the food movement awakens the sense that no, we are not just passive consumers, we are active co-creators, shaping a market according to our values, both through the rules that we're creating and the choices that we're making every day, whether it be to support a community-supported agriculture, purchase a fair trade product, or in terms of setting the rules, weighing in on 2012 Farm Bill. The food movement power, therefore, I believe, is connection itself. That corporatism, the dominant mental map, distances us from one another, from the earth, and even from our own bodies, tricking us to eat things that are actually destroying our bodies. So while the food movement does the opposite, it celebrates our reconnection at all of those levels. And just one memory I have of that very human connection. I was visiting CSAs in Madison, Wisconsin a few years ago, and I was talking to Barb Perkins, one of the CSA farmers, and she said, Frankie, she said, what pleases me so much about our lives now is not just that we're making it financially, but it's what happened in town last week when I was shopping, and this little kid, I saw him tugging on his mom's purse and saying, Mommy, Mommy, look, there's our farmer. And also reminded in that regard that my little step-grandson at 3 last Halloween, who has gone to our CSA with us every Saturday over the growing season, and he decided that he wanted to be a farmer for Halloween. And he'd only seen a woman farmer to that point, so I thought that was really cool. So my sense, and this is a theme of EcoMind, my new book, is that this movement encourages us to think like an ecosystem, and that is profound. It enables us to see our place connected to all others at all times. And so we learn that in ecological systems, as my friend physicist Hans-Peter Duhr has put it, in ecological systems, there are no parts, there are only participants. And that is a very different way of seeing life. So with an eco-mind, we can let go of this productivist frame that keeps us producing both more food and more hunger. And we can drop the premise of lack with the fear that engenders in us, and embrace what I think of as a premise of possibility, that is one that understands that once we align with nature, both human nature and nature itself, then there's more than enough for all. So I'm saying that I'm so happy to be here, celebrating, learning, moving forward with you, because I believe that the food movement stirs and meets deep human need for connection, for power, and for fairness. And so let's not let anyone tell us that this is just a nice thing that we're doing. It is also powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.